the best of America, and you leave us with a debt we can never hope to repay.
So in moments, we will hear from Danny Coulson, former deputy assistant to the FBI, who says that in his time there, agents were non-political. He points out that agents who voted for Richard Nixon then uncovered his criminal behavior, but says that all of that changed with Jim Comey. Byron York and Adrian Elrod are here as well in moments, but we start with the latest tonight from Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry. Good evening, Ed.
Martha, great to see you. The revelations keep on coming for the FBI, from anti-Trump text messages to questionable changes to Jim Comey's remarks that help ensure Hillary Clinton would not face criminal charges. That led President Trump, as you note today, to charge that the system was rigged. Yet Democrats today focused their fury on the mechanics of how those text messages from FBI agent Peter Strzok leaked out, not the substance of what he said and what it means for an independent FBI. Jerry Nadler, senior Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, firing off a letter to the Trump Justice Department demanding the names of which officials shared those text messages. A spokeswoman for Attorney General Jeff Sessions made clear they turned the text over to key members of the Judiciary panel first on Tuesday night before the media got it, as the president tried to keep the focus on what FBI agents actually have done with both the Clinton and Trump investigations. A study in contrast, as we saw the president, as you noted, throw some punches at the agency in that morning session with reporters, then tried to be a little more diplomatic.
It's a shame what's happened with the FBI. The level of anger at what they've been witnessing with respect to the FBI is certainly very sad.
The President of the United States has your back 100%. I will fight for you, and I will never, ever let you down, ever.
We are expecting more revelations early next week. On Monday, the Senate Intelligence Committee hears testimony behind closed doors from Bruce Orr. Remember, he was just demoted at the Justice Department after it was revealed he had meetings with Fusion GPS officials. His wife, Nellie, worked at Fusion GPS, which dug up that dirt for the Trump dossier of unverified information, and he met with the former British spy at the center of that whole mess. Then on Tuesday, Andrew McCabe, controversial deputy director at the FBI, is supposed to face questioning from the House Intelligence Committee. But remember, he's gotten out of that before, citing scheduling conflicts. The real question now is, when will we hear from Peter Strzok? Were those texts just an honest expression of personal views, or did this infect his investigation of Hillary Clinton, so much so that he deliberately changed all that material that we talked about last night in James Comey's exoneration statement to shut down any potential criminal charges against Clinton? Martha?
And thank you very much. So here now with more insight on morale inside the Bureau, former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI, Danny Coulson. Danny, great to have you with us this evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
You have said that Jim Comey set the tone where his high-level officials, the kind of people that Ed Henry was just reporting on, felt free to take a political position and, from what we now know, acted upon it. Serious stuff.
It's very serious stuff. And I think what you have to do, Martha, is to put it in context with the text messages and what happened after that. The people that were involved in text messaging actually ran the investigation of Hillary Clinton, and they acquiesced to not having a grand jury. They acquiesced to not investigating the Clinton Foundation, and it raises all kinds of obstruction of justice questions about people who had a stake in the fight, who took action to ensure that this investigation was not fair and equal. And that, to me, is outrageous. I know it makes the agents in the field, they're outrageous. They're perplexed.
Investigation, which is now in the special counsel's bailiwick. Do you agree with him, or would you rather see the director of the FBI say, look, we have problems. We have issues from the prior administration, and we need to clean house in some respects? Should Andrew McCabe still be there, for example?
Well, I think that he has to find out what happened here. There are a lot of things that are coming out that I'm sure he doesn't even know about, and I will guarantee you that next week or so, you're going to have more agents who are tangentially involved in this investigation. They're going to come forward with some things that I think will curl our hair. I think, well, we'll see. The jury's out. He shouldn't go out and make a presumptuous statement about we need a clean house. when he doesn't know the facts. Do we need a clean house? Probably yes, we probably do. But let's don't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Yeah. The FBI is a strong investigative agency. They're uncorruptible. I did Iran-Contra. I voted for Ronald Reagan. I went after him hammer and tong. We are supposed to be apolitical and dedicated to truth and justice. That sounds kind of corny, but that's what we do. Yeah, and I think we have to find out what happened.
Yeah. What did you think of the president's comments today? And, you know, you're pointing out something that I think is so important for people to understand. And I do think that that was one of the points that was brought forward by Christopher Wray and also by the head of the Rod Rosenstein, who is the deputy attorney general, that there are a lot of hardworking people in the agency and who are frankly disgusted with what they've seen happen. And they deserve to be separated from all of this. But we also have to get answers, which you seem to be hinting at, that you feel that we're going to hear a lot more information, as you say, from tangential people who were affiliated with this investigation. What makes you say that?
Well, I know the FBI. I know the FBI culture, and I know how they feel about the integrity of what they do. That's who we are. We are not FBI agents just for a title. There's a culture among us, and the ones that have left, and the ones that are still there, and we want to be viewed as somebody that's not corruptible. And I think that the leadership under Comey basically let us down. His former agents and his current agents, he let us down. He let politics creep into the process, and at least he violated the look bad rule here. And how that happened, I do not know. But I will tell you one thing, we do not need another independent counsel. I have been one, I've worked for one, and I will tell you, let's let the IG at DOJ get to the bottom of this. Remember, he's the one that found the text and brought him forward. Let's trust that process. Hope the Attorney General bucks up and supports this guy and say, let's find out what happened, no matter, and let's let the chips fall where they may.
And what about on the Hill? They're so frustrated that they're not getting answers from the FBI on this. How do they get around that? How does that change?
I don't think I think they should get the facts from the FBI, from the Department of Justice. There's always a temptation not to show yourself in a bad light as an agency. That's got to go. The only way to cleanse this thing is have a total cleansing. Tell everything that happened. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let the IG do his best and probably convene a grand jury to find out exactly what happened. Yeah, and then in the end, whatever they have in terms of their findings will be respected. If everybody feels like that process has been what it should be in terms of being upfront about what really went on. Danny Coulson, thank you so much for being here tonight, sir. Great to see you. I always enjoy working with you. Thank you. And I with you. Thank you very much, Danny. So joining me now, Byron York, chief political columnist at The Washington Times and a Fox News contributor, and Adrian Elrod was the strategic communications director for Hillary Clinton's campaign. Adrian, let me start with you, because there does seem to be a lot of concern on the Democratic side. You know, how did these text messages get out there in the first place and all of that? And you look back at some of the statements by Brian Fallon and Robbie Mook and others. They were very supportive of looking into having this investigated by the Inspector General. They wanted to uncover what could be found out about the Hillary Clinton investigation, but now it seems like they're not too happy with what they found.
Well, look, first of all, I think going forward during the campaign, all of us wanted to see a very concerted, independent investigation that looked at this.
Americans did not know about a story that rocked the political landscape this week. Our resident historian, James Rosen, takes a look back through the lens of history to explain what happened the last time that Democrats celebrated a victory in Alabama, and are there lessons for today from James? Plus, an ominous new threat from ISIS. Out of revenge against President Trump's decision on Jerusalem, are they targeting churches in the United States at Christmas? Scary stuff coming up. Also, Marco Rubio's play. Where did it come from? And why so late in the game? And other concerns tonight that could put the tax cut bill at risk. Karl Rove, Molly Hemingway, and Chris Steyerwalt. Great Friday panel. Team up to give us an eye on what to look for this weekend. Next.
I think he'll be there. He's really been a great guy and very supportive. I think that Senator Rubio will be there for sure.
We'll see how it plays out. I want to support tax reform. It's important for the country. I don't think my position on this is a mystery.
So word is now that he is a yes, but Senator Rubio was playing some last-minute hardball on the tax bill, almost putting the whole thing in jeopardy. The Florida Republican demanded an increase in the refundable child tax credit for his vote, and it looks like party leaders went along with this. Rubio tweeted this afternoon, quote, increasing the refundability of the child tax credit from 55% to 70% is a solid step towards broader reforms, which are both pro-growth and pro-worker. And he is not the only wild card that Republicans were concerned about. There are new ones as well tonight. Here now our power panel. Karl Rove, former Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Chris Stirewalt, Fox News politics editor. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist and a Fox News contributor as well. Welcome to all of you on this Friday evening. Howdy there. It has been a rocky path. You know, there was a lot of talk about Marco Rubio, sort of an acerbic piece that was quoting Grover Norquist, slamming him, saying, why was he so late to the table? You've got to do your homework on time. Ted Cruz used to behave like this when he was younger, he said. Thoughts on that, Carl?
That's a tough criticism there, don't you think? Look, Rubio had leverage and he used it. He has been the leading exponent of increasing the child tax credit. And that language, that stirring language of 55 to 70% refundability, what that means is that lots of people who do not have a tax burden will now escape having to pay not only any tax burden, but then they'll get money back to help with their child care expenses.
Yeah, and that is, you know, good probably policy overall for Republicans, Molly, right?
Well, you can have a genuine disagreement about whether refundable tax credits are a good idea or whether you should use the tax policy for social engineering. Right. But it's not, this refundable tax credit does go to working people. So it's not that they don't pay income taxes. They don't, but they do pay payroll taxes. So it's not just a complete welfare gift here. And this is something that not just Rubio, but Senator Mike Lee have really put a lot of effort into for years. They really believe that this is a family-friendly policy that will encourage more people to have children. And whether you think that tax code should be used to encourage that or not, everyone should be having more children. So that's a good move all around.
Everyone should be having more children. Chris Stirewalt.
Hard pass.
So in terms of what's going to happen here, because it seems like every time this thing feels like it's put together, there are some wobbly knees out there. Jeff Flake is still sort of on the fence. Collins still on the fence. Mike Lee, for reasons that Molly just mentioned, partially still on the fence. So how's this looking?
And John McCain's in Arizona and Thad Cochran's in Mississippi. Look, this gets close and it gets tight. I definitely agree that for Republicans, putting a more worker-friendly, a party that was just riven by a populist revolt, responding to it with its first major piece of legislation being a corporate tax cut isn't exactly Huey Long, right? So doing something that looks like it is more worker-oriented or for lower wage earners probably is optically good for Republicans. But the question now is, Rubio and Lee having succeeded in extracting this from the leadership, what other hands go up around the room before the vote can take place? They want to go on Tuesday. Who else says, well, if he gets that, I want this now? And do the other deals hold? And does anybody else who's been on the fence think about jumping?
Carl.
Yeah, look, last night I was talking with some members of the Senate who are involved in this process, and I think Rubio was the last, in their minds, the last big obstacle. Susan Collins has been working to protect certain provisions that she's gotten in. She had 3 amendments that she got in. She's been working on some other issues that have popped up in the conference committee. I think she's in a good place. Flake was just sort of observing this all and wanting to make certain that if things went south, he would be in a place where he could hopefully keep them from going further worse. You do have McCain. I think he's at Walter Reed. You do have Cochran, who's suffering from a urinary tract infection and is going to come and vote next week. He announced just a few minutes ago he was going to be there. Yeah. So, but it is a lot of moving pieces. When you got 52-49 and one of your 52 is gone and you can't afford to lose 2, every person is a king or queen who wants to jump into this process. However, all of the conferees have signed, and normally what that means is that you wouldn't have all the conferees signed unless all the issues had been resolved.
I just want to say we wish Senator McCain well. He is suffering from some complications from his treatment, and we wish him well. We did hear that he hopes and plans to be back next week for this vote, and we certainly hope that that's the case. Michael Gerson said this with reflection on the Alabama race this week. He said the only way that elected Republicans will abandon abandon Trump is if they see it in their own self-interest. And the only way they will believe it is in their self-interest is to watch a considerable number of their fellow Republicans lose. Molly.
Well, and that seems to be a theme for Gerson and other people who are part of the Never Trump movement. They want to see more people to see failure so that they join that. But I think for a lot of people, what they're seeing in the real world with the real voters is that people are generally happy with the policies of Donald Trump. They might not like the tweeting. They might not like the behavior. They might not have liked that for many decades. But when it comes to getting judicial appointees through, which, Donald Trump just set a record with
huge
that this
numbers,
year.
Yeah.
And that's in addition to Gorsuch, which was a huge thing. Getting out of the Paris climate change agreement and just in general the deregulatory path, and even with this national security strategy that's coming out on Monday, a focus on actual national security threats instead of stuff like climate change, which is what we saw under Obama. So this idea that everyone's going to share this sort of extreme revulsion to Trump that some people in Never Trumpism have, I think is an unwise approach.
Fascinating. All right, we'll be back with all of you. Stick around. Thank you very much. So they will stick around. And Molly just mentioned this, the future of the world living in fear of a number of things, including a nuclear North Korea. Rex Tillerson takes a page out of his boss's playbook on this, extending an offer to Kim Jong-un. Then the White House under fire for its plan to end the opioid crisis. Critics say that they are not doing enough yet. A father who lost his son to an overdose, on the progress that is being made so far in this effort. Where do we go from here? Coming up.
I can get through to you because I've been exactly where you've been. It's one addict helping another addict.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Trace Gallagher. A rare occurrence at the United Nations today. North Korea's ambassador addressing the Security Council. Ambassador Jasong Nam giving no indication the North will budge on its nuclear ambitions. The ambassador telling the council his country's nuclear weapons are, quote, a self-defense measure to protect the North against the nuclear threat and blackmail of the U.S., allies and enemies of the North. They all joined forces Friday in opposition to the North's determination to be recognized as a nuclear weapon state. And another first for SpaceX at Cape Canaveral today. It launched a recycled rocket with a recycled capsule. The unmanned capsule being sent into space on what's being called a grocery run. Supplies are being sent to the International Space Station. The SpaceX craft should reach there by Sunday. I'm Trace Gallagher. If news breaks out, we'll break in. Now back to the story.
10 days till Christmas, and there is this ominous warning from ISIS tonight. Soon on your holidays. Soon. Very soon. The terror group's supporters promising attacks on churches over the course of the Christmas season, and it comes just days after the failed suicide bombing in New York City in the subway system. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us now with the latest on the credibility of these threats. Good evening, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Martha. An Islamic State supporter posted this graphic showing an ISIS fighter looking at Washington's National Cathedral, which is in flames. Like previous propaganda, it includes a cryptic message suggesting even threatening an attack time for the holidays. For some context, this was not published by the ISIS news agency, but rather one of its followers. Analysts also tell Fox News there has been a subtle shift. A recent edition of the ISIS online magazine laid out the steps to execute these vehicle attacks like the one we saw in October in New York City, where 8 were killed and several others were injured. ISIS is now encouraging followers to flee the scene and survive. With the loss of the so-called caliphate in Iraq and Syria, one analyst suggests the group is facing a shortage of recruits who are willing to die for the cause. Also, a counterterrorism contact who does work for the U.S. government tells Fox he believes ISIS has not been more aggressive, taking responsibility for the 27-year-old suspect in Monday's New York City subway attack because the terror group is scattered, having lost its base in Iraq and Syria, and key decision makers who ran their external operations and propaganda are dead. Analysts are also telling us to watch Hamza bin Laden. This is the son of al-Qaeda's Osama bin Laden. He's believed to be in his late 20s. A senior analyst says Hamza may be able to bring together al-Qaeda and the remnants of ISIS because he is young, doesn't have the baggage of the current al-Qaeda leadership, and Hamza bin Laden, for obvious reasons, has the name recognition, Martha.
Certainly does. Catherine, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Joining me once again, Karl Rove, Chris Stirewalt, and Molly Hemingway. It is chilling to look at that all of those images, and also the picture of Hamza bin Laden, because one thing that we have learned over the years about al-Qaeda and about ISIS is that they're patient. They create goals, scenarios that they want to carry out, and if it takes months or years, that's what they do. But it is, I guess, in some ways heartening to hear in Catherine's report that at this moment they are somewhat scattered, and it is of interest that they did not choose to claim these two New York attackers as their own, although they were ISIS-inspired. So how prepared politically, in terms of the Trump administration and what's being done, Molly, are we? How strong is our posture right now on this front?
Right. Well, one thing to remember is that ISIS tends not to take credit for people who commit terror attacks unless they are killed in the terror attack. And both of those New York attackers are still alive. And that might be part of why ISIS isn't taking credit. I mean, sometimes people are flying ISIS flags, they have the notes, they claim inspiration, and ISIS still doesn't take credit. But that's why, again, I'm really interested in this national security strategy document that's coming out on Monday. H.R. McMaster gave a bit of a preview to it. During the Obama administration, it was focused a lot on cybersecurity and climate change. And this document, I believe, is going to be focused more like a laser on North Korea, jihadist terrorism, things that actually are security threats that the national security apparatus should be engaged in. And you're already seeing that the Trump administration has focused on ISIS and had some pretty strong success with that. But of course, Islamist terrorism is something that will be ongoing. There is no way to utterly defeat it. It's a religiously motivated ideology, which is why they are thinking about focusing on Christians. And Christians should be prepared for that. That's just part of the story.
I mean, we've certainly seen what they've done in the Middle East, Chris, and churches are one of their favorite targets. And as Molly rightly points out, it is a religious-based extremism that wants to attack Christianity, and it wants to attack members of the Jewish faith as well, and even, infidels in their own faith, which we've seen carried out to a great extent as well. President Trump on this issue, how prepared is he, Chris? You can never know what's coming next, but the fear is that something is.
Well, it always could be, but are you scared? I'm not. I certainly take Molly's point that everybody, especially Christians, especially everybody, has to be prepared for the fact that, yeah, there are people in the world that want to do the United States harm and want to harm its citizens. That's a fact of life. That's been a fact of life for quite a while now, and that's something we have learned to live with. But these guys suck. They are terrible. We have destroyed them. The United States Air Force rained hell down on one of the remaining garrisons of ISIS in Syria. We have destroyed these people. We have riven them.
Well, that may be, Chris. I mean, from an institutional perspective, perhaps, but living in New York City, when I go down the West Side Drive and I look over where those 8 tourists from South America were killed, when I go into the subway system, I think about that guy. Yeah, I'm scared. I am scared. And I'm scared in the holidays when I walk up and down this street outside my window right here on 6th Avenue, where there are throngs of tourists, through Rockefeller Center, where the big Christmas tree is, packed people. And all it takes is one little backpack and a guy who's not an idiot who figures out how to blow the thing up. I mean, yes, I'm scared. I think a lot of people are.
When I drive by the Pentagon and when I think about all of the things that could happen when you go around in Washington, D.C. or New York or any of these places, yes, certainly an attack is always possible. But here's why I'm not scared. Because, number one, there's nothing I can do about it if it's going to happen. If it's going to happen, it's in God's hands, not mine, number one. Number two, we're really good at this. And, yeah, it is anything could always happen. But our record since 2001 of preventing large-scale attacks here in the United States is pretty daggone good.
Large-scale, yes. The Tsarnaev brothers tell a different story, and all of those people who were lost in that, and for every one of those people, Carl, who lost somebody, it only takes one person in your life who's gone to take this really seriously.
Yeah. And look, we have been largely effective since 9/11, but that's because we've adopted as a country a strategy of fighting them over there so we don't have to fight them as much here at home. But we have to be 100% perfect all the time. And as we saw with the recent case here in New York, we're having to deal with remote inspiration. And I think part of these messages are, first of all, to say, hey, we're still around. That was the first one. Right. But the second one was to say, if you're out there and you agree with us, please try and do something during this holiday season.
Good points, all. Thanks, you guys. Great to have you with us today.
You bet.
All right, so a big week in the state of Alabama as it elects a Democrat to serve alongside Republican Senator Richard Shelby. But there's an interesting historical twist because we always like to put things in big context, and we're going to start doing